It's the ultimate countdown of the greatest NBA teams in league history. There are a few things I took into consideration to create this list. I looked at their regular season performance and how dominant they were in the playoffs, the amount of talent they had on their roster, as well as their advanced numbers. We're going to evaluate how the teams did specifically for their time and compare them to how other teams performed. We will not be disrespecting the great teams of the past. All the championship winning teams since 1960 are guaranteed to have a spot. However, the great non-titled teams will also be getting their just due. Without further ado, let's get started. Number 100, we have the 2012 Chicago Bulls. This is only one of two teams on this list that didn't win a playoff series, but we must consider the context. Derrick Rose was injured in the first round of the playoffs. Prior to that career-devastating injury, the Bulls were destined for greatness behind their dominant defense. They posted the best opponent's points per game and second best defensive rating for the entire 2010s. Combine that with an MVP caliber player and who knows what they could have accomplished. Number 99, we have the 1978 Portland Trail Blazers. They were on the verge of having one of the most dominant seasons ever. They had a 50-10 record after 60 games. Sadly, Bill Walton was sidelined with a serious injury. He still won the MVP, and then he re-injured himself in the first round. If he remained healthy, I strongly believe that they would have ended up winning the title and being remembered as one of the 20 greatest teams. Number 98, we have the 1995 Orlando Magic. This was one of the most entertaining teams of the 90s. Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway quickly became the most exciting duo, and they were surrounded with some great pieces. This was an explosive offensive team. They even posted the third highest offensive rating of the decade. Getting swept in the finals proved that they had some growing up to do, but there's no question that they were on the verge of something special. Number 97, we have the 2017 San Antonio Spurs. In their first season without Tim Duncan, they had one of the greatest regular seasons in franchise history. They were the best defensive team in the league, and that was largely thanks to Kawhi Leonard. He was unquestionably the best perimeter defender, and he took a huge leap on his offensive game. The Spurs were also the most efficient three-point shooting team. It makes you wonder what could have happened if Zaza didn't take matters into his own hands. Number 96, we have the 1993 New York Knicks. We have another legendary defensive team, but they played a much more bruising style. When you have Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, and Anthony Mason guarding the paint, you're going to think twice about driving to the rim. They were unquestionably the toughest team to score against during the early 90s era. On top of that, this is tied for the highest win total in franchise history, along with the legendary 1970 team. Number 95, we have the 2000 Portland Trail Blazers. Phil Jackson once famously described them as the best team money can buy. They were loaded from top to bottom. They had a great mix of young and promising talent and veterans who knew exactly what it took to win. Scottie Pippen's leadership took this team to another level. At times, they looked unbeatable. They were truly one quarter away from eventually becoming champions. Number 94, we have the 1978 Washington Bullets. They had the lowest amount of wins from a title-winning team that will appear on this list, but this is a perfect example of a team that peaked at the right time, that utilized their strength, which was their defense. They faced the two best offensive teams on the road to the finals, and they shut down the George Gervin-led Spurs and the Dr. J-led Sixers. Then they used their depth to win Game 7 of the finals. Number 93, we have the 1979 Seattle Supersonics. They had the best backcourt duo in the league. They had a Hall of Fame center, a deep roster, and a swarming defense. It's hard to pinpoint a weakness in this Sonics team, but what allowed them to win its only title in franchise history was their defense. They finished first in defensive rating, points allowed, and opponent's field goal percentage. Number 92, we have the 1976 Boston Celtics. Although John Havlicek was showing signs of declining, they didn't lose a step on offense. That's because they added Hall of Fame guard Charlie Scott. This was a well-balanced team that excelled on both sides of the floor. In the finals, they proved exactly what it means to have a heart of a champion. That's especially the case in the iconic Game 5, where they made so many big plays in that triple overtime thriller. Number 91, we have the 2014 Miami Heat. After reaching the finals in 3 straight years, they weren't looking to break any records. It was all about getting healthy for the playoffs. But in the regular season, there was still a very efficient offense. They were only the second team to average over 50% from the field throughout the entire 2010s, along with the 2018 Warriors. LeBron James had a lot to do with that, who was impossible to stop on offense. It took a historically great team in the finals to end the Heatles era for good. Number 90, we have the 2004 Los Angeles Lakers. On paper, this is one of the most talented teams, even if Karl Malone and Gary Payton were past their prime. In the beginning of the season, they proved exactly what their ceiling was. They started the first 20 games going 17-3. However, injuries, locker room drama, and outside noise prevented them from reaching their lofty expectations. Even with all the scrutiny they were facing, they still managed to reach the finals while giving us some of the most iconic moments. Number 89, we have the 1969 Los Angeles Lakers. This is another ultra-talented Lakers team that failed to reach expectations. They could never figure out the best offensive game plan for these three legendary players to coexist. Despite some of their problems, the Lakers had the second best record with their talent alone. They could have even won more games if it wasn't for Jerry West missing 21 games. They're the ultimate example that the right coach is just as important as the talent on the roster. Number 88, we have the 1969 Boston Celtics. They were never supposed to win. They were old and done, but they proved to the world that winning is a skill. This was the only time in the Bill Russell era that they were the underdogs in each playoff series, but they ended the most dominant run in NBA history by doing what they did best, and that was their defense. They won their 11th title in 13 years, and each player contributed in a major way. Number 87, we have the 1992 Portland Trail Blazers. They ended up reaching the finals for the second time in 3 years. For the first 3 seasons of the 90s, they were the best team in the West. The first player that many fans think of is Clyde Drexler, and rightfully so. He was considered the second best player in the world, but they were far from a one-man show. Terry Porter was arguably a top 5 point guard in the league, and they had 5 other players who were close to averaging in double figures. Number 86, we have the 1986 Houston Rockets. They were the first of their kind. The league had never seen a front line like theirs. 2 ultra-talented 7-footers, Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon. But they were much more than the Twin Towers. This team was loaded with talent. They were dubbed the future of the NBA. That was apparent when they handed the defending champions a gentleman's sweep, and then they gave arguably the greatest team of all time a lot of trouble in the finals. Number 85, we have the 1974 Milwaukee Bucks. This was Oscar Robertson's final year of his career, and he wasn't the same player. Instead of having an off year, they finished with the best record, the highest offensive rating, and the second best defensive rating. The bulk of the credit goes to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was at the peak of his powers. The rest of the players from the 1971 title team gave Kareem just enough help to remain in title contention. It took all 7 games of the finals to knock them out. Number 84, we have the 2016 Oklahoma City Thunder. They were incredibly dangerous for one reason. They had 2 MVP caliber players while in their prime. They took turns manipulating the defense, and they made the opposition pay if they paid too much attention to the other. Together, they knocked out the Spurs in the playoffs, who won 67 games. And then they were 1 game away from beating the 73-win Warriors. They nearly beat 2 all-time great regular season teams, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. Number 83, we have the 2025 Indiana Pacers. After forcing a Game 7 to one of the greatest regular season teams of all time, they proved that their playoff run was no fluke. Their offense peaked at the right time, and there was no team that was able to slow them down. They played at an incredibly fast pace, but they also proved how important it is to have a great closer, and Tyrese Halliburton had one of the most clutch playoff runs of all time. Number 82, we have the 2005 Detroit Pistons. They are on this list for all the reasons that we'll eventually discuss for their title-winning 2004 season. They even had the same regular season record. Their legendary defensive play allowed them to win nearly back-to-back titles. They were eliminated by the Spurs in the 7th game. During that playoff run, their opponent scored over 100 points twice out of 25 games. Number 81, we have the 2010 Boston Celtics. After an up-and-down regular season, they turned on the switch in the playoffs. They looked like their championship selves thanks to their defense. Let's not forget that they had to go through Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Dwight Howard, and Kobe Bryant. Their defense came alive, and their bench play took a lot of pressure off the big 3. They were only one game away from completing a tough playoff run. Number 80, we have the 1990 Chicago Bulls. This was the beginning of the Phil Jackson era. Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant both took leaps in their game, and they were starting to look like the team that would end up being the greatest dynasty of the modern NBA. Then there was Michael Jordan, who had one of the greatest individual seasons of his legendary career. The way they dominated their first two opponents in the playoffs proves what they were capable of. They just needed a little bit more to defeat a truly historic team. Number 79, we have the 1968 Philadelphia 76ers. This was essentially a continuation of their historic 1967 season. They were the highest scoring team and the number one rated defense. Wilt Chamberlain won his third straight MVP, and he played with so much confidence after finally winning his first title. Billy Cunningham also took a leap in his game, which made them seem even more unbeatable. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the first round. He later became the first team to blow a 3-1 series lead. Number 78, we have the 1968 Boston Celtics, and this was the first team to ever successfully come back from 3-1. Bill Russell did a fantastic job of containing Wilt Chamberlain in Games 6 and 7 of the division finals. Then the offensive trio of John Havlicek, Sam Jones, and Bailey Howell made them such a tough team to stop. All four players stepped up big time in the playoffs and increased their production when it mattered the most. Number 77, we have the 2006 Miami Heat. Udonis Haslem described this team perfectly when he said that it was the most unpredictable group of guys that could possibly be put together to win a championship. But they came together at the perfect time, and they all contributed in a major way during their playoff run. But in the finals, Dwayne Wade had one of the greatest stretches of basketball, and he carried his team past the finish line. Number 76, we have the 2022 Golden State Warriors. This was Steph Curry's, Klay Thompson's, and Draymond Green's last stand. No super team was needed to win this title. They simply continued the trend that they started nearly a decade before: stifling defense, beautiful ball movement, and three-point shooting. Then there was the magic of Steph Curry. He had what many consider his best individual playoff run, and not even a top 2 defensive team could stop him. We've now reached the top 75. At number 75, we have the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks. There were many changes that was done to this roster. Drew Holiday, PJ Tucker, and Bobby Portis were the new additions. The tweaks that they made allowed them to get over their previous playoff struggles. They proved that they were more than a one-man show when they won the last 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals without Giannis. But then the Greek Freak did the rest, and he had one of the greatest final series in league history. Number 74, we have the 2007 Phoenix Suns. They were showing all the signs of an all-time great season. They averaged a league best 110.2 points per game, which was 11.5 more than the league average. They shot over 50% from the field and 40% from the three. Then there was Steve Nash, who was playing at a higher level than his previous 2 MVP seasons. But a controversial suspension by the league prevented this team from a real shot at winning the title. Number 73, we have the 2017 Cleveland Cavaliers. In the regular season, injuries played a major role in the struggles they had, but they were all healthy for the playoffs, and they crushed their Eastern Conference opponents. They only lost 1 game on their road to the finals. During that span, they shot 43% from the three. The big three were also clicking in all cylinders. It was the best that we ever saw them play together. But in the finals, it was only good enough to win 1 game against a juggernaut. Number 72, we have the 2003 San Antonio Spurs. Their identity was their defense, and that's what drove them to have the league's best record. David Robinson was in his final year, Manu Ginobili was a rookie, and Tony Parker was in his second season. They were going to rely more on their role players to step up, and they did in the biggest moments. But make no mistake about it, Tim Duncan had arguably the greatest season from start to finish. He was a driving force on both ends, and he was firmly established as the NBA's greatest power forward. Number 71, we have the 1995 Houston Rockets. Prior to the trade deadline, they were bound for an early playoff exit. Once they brought in Clyde Drexler, everything changed. They gave Hakeem Olajuwon the star teammate he's always wanted, and they were able to get through the toughest road to the title that we've ever seen. Then you have the role players who found a way to make one big shot after another throughout the entire postseason. And when Hakeem was playing at that level, there was nothing you could do to stop them. Number 70, we have the 1974 Boston Celtics. It only took 5 years to bring another championship to Beantown since Bill Russell retired. This time, they weren't going to let it slip away with a healthy John Havlicek. They cruised past their Eastern Conference opponents, and they showed a lot of grit in the grueling 7-game series against the Milwaukee Bucks. One great player will never beat a great team in a 7-game series, and the 74 Celtics certainly fit that description. Number 69, we have the 1966 Boston Celtics. If we all get tired of a team after winning 2 championships in a row, imagine how badly everyone wanted this team to be dethroned. But their focus and consistency were extremely admirable. After pacing themselves in the regular season, they showed a lot of heart in the opening series against the Royals and in the finals against the Lakers. They were pushed to the deciding 5th and 7th game, but as always, they found a way to win. Number 68, we have the 2002 Sacramento Kings. During an era where everyone was slowing it down on offense, they ran the floor and passed the ball like few ever had. They had so many great playmakers and shot creators. They even had 7 players averaging in double figures, which was extremely rare during this time. They won 61 games with Chris Webber missing 28 games. Then they gave the Shaq and Kobe Lakers the biggest test they ever faced during the 3-peat title run. Many believe they were robbed of winning a title. Number 67, we have the 1988 Detroit Pistons. They were overwhelming in more ways than one. They had a lot of versatile defenders and players who were more than willing to get their hands dirty. They were a top 3 defensive team. On offense, there were 9 players deep. They easily had the best bench in the league. They also had Adrian Dantley, who could get a bucket whenever he wanted. They were only 1 game away from defeating Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson on their way to the title. Number 66, we have the 1981 Philadelphia 76ers. Statistically speaking, they were on the same level as the title-winning Celtics. They had the same record, they split their season series, they had a better defensive rating, and they averaged more points. Since joining the NBA, Dr. J was playing at his highest level. He was the MVP winner that year. Their defensive greatness was truly their biggest strength. In the conference finals against Boston, 5 games were decided by 2 points or less. They just couldn't close it out after being up 3-1. Number 65, we have the 1987 Boston Celtics. Various injuries to key players brought this team back to earth. The lack of depth was the story all year long, and they had to rely so much on the starting lineup. That roster was more than enough to win nearly 60 games, but that era of invincibility was now gone. And yet, they were still close to winning their 4th title in 7 years. Larry Bird had another MVP caliber season, and Kevin McHale was at his apex. They had 2 of the 5 best players at the peak of their powers. They just couldn't overcome the injury bug. Number 64, we have the 2019 Toronto Raptors. It's the greatest gamble a team has ever made. They knew that Kawhi Leonard could leave after 1 season, but they knew how close they were to winning it all, and everything fell into place perfectly. They were already good without him. They went 17-5 when he wasn't in the lineup. With him, they had someone who could shut down the other team's best player and close out games in a way we hadn't seen since Michael Jordan. For this playoff run, the comparisons were worthy. Number 63, we have the 2011 Dallas Mavericks. They're one of the best feel-good stories on this list. Each individual player and this team were counted out, never given a chance. Time and time again, they proved everyone wrong. They were a tremendous 3-point shooting team. They knew exactly how to take out each team's best player, and they were excellent in the clutch. Dirk Nowitzki was especially brilliant, and he had what many consider as one of the greatest playoff runs. Number 62, we have the 1994 Houston Rockets. They started the season going 15-0, and they never looked back. They wisely decided to surround Hakeem with a bunch of shooters. When they were knocking down to 3, they were unbeatable. But their biggest strength was their defense. They had various players who stepped up on that end. Then there was Hakeem Olajuwon. He had what many consider the greatest single season in league history. He is still the only player to win the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP in the same season. Number 61, we have the 1982 Boston Celtics. The 63 wins is certainly impressive, but their 18-game winning streak is another story. Larry Bird was out for 5 of those games, and they were still able to continue winning. Once he came back from his injury, he was coming off the bench for the rest of the year. But none of that mattered. This highlights the depth that they had. But in the conference finals, they lost all-star guard Tiny Archibald in Game 3. They later lost to the Sixers in 7 games. It makes you wonder what they could have accomplished if they were healthy. Number 60, we have the 1997 Utah Jazz. They're among the top 30 for the most wins and highest margin of victory for a season. That's something that forces us to respect what they accomplish. The way they ran their offense was extremely efficient, and they were the only team to shoot over 50% for the year. Karl Malone was still in the middle of his long peak, and he was the MVP winner. John Stockton remained a top 3 point guard, and he was able to provide the team's greatest moment. Number 59, we have the 1996 Seattle Supersonics. Along with the 97 Jazz, they are tied with the second most wins from a team that lost in the finals. They benefited so much from having one of the greatest perimeter defenders ever, Gary Payton. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award that year. This team featured all 5 starters who averaged over 10 points. To give an idea of how strong they were, the 72-win Bulls only suffered 4 double-digit losses all year, and 2 of them came during their final series. Number 58, we have the 1993 Phoenix Suns. There was simply no team that could keep up with their high-power offense. They had the 6th highest points per game average for the 90s. They also had a total of 7 players that averaged in double figures in the regular season. Even with Kevin Johnson playing 49 games, they were still able to be the highest scoring team in the league. The biggest difference maker was Charles Barkley, who immediately turned this team into a title contender. Number 57, we have the 1985 Boston Celtics. Believe it or not, this was an average year for them. Winning over 60 games was a common occurrence during Larry Bird's prime, and he was playing his best basketball up to that point. For the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, he even posted 3 40-point games. Then he suffered a multitude of injuries that caused him to have a shooting slump. With him struggling, they just didn't have enough firepower to keep up with the Lakers' offensive greatness in the finals. Number 56, we have the 1964 Boston Celtics. We all know that their defense was all-time great, but here's a prime example of that. Their first playoff opponent was the Cincinnati Royals. They won 55 games. They were the highest scoring team and the most efficient. Oscar Robertson even won the MVP. Here's why they lost in a gentleman's sweep. They shot 35% for the series, 10% less than their regular season average. The Big O shot 39.8%, nearly 10% less than his regular season average. It's the perfect example of why the Celtics kept winning and winning. Number 55, we have the 1977 Portland Trail Blazers. They were the team that came out of nowhere. No one was expecting them to win the title coming to the first season after the NBA/ABA merger. They did it by playing an unselfish brand of basketball. They took on the personality of their leader, Bill Walton. He was the greatest passing big man, an exceptional rim protector, and a very skilled low post scorer. He completed one of the most iconic playoff runs. Number 54, we have the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers. The biggest move that they made was trading for Anthony Davis. We knew he would be the perfect running mate for LeBron, and their chemistry on the court was perfect. Their 2-man game was nearly impossible to defend. That allowed their outside shooters to get plenty of open looks, but their defense was their biggest strength as they wisely invested in various rim protectors. Bubble or not, they proved all season long that they were the best team. Number 53, we have the 1961 Boston Celtics. What makes this season stand out was their playoff dominance. They won by an average margin of 11.6 points, which is the 6th highest ever since 1960. Bill Russell was at the peak of his powers as he won the MVP. Bob Cousy finished 6th, and Tom Heinsohn was 7th in MVP voting. They were extremely deep. Number 52, we have the 2010 Los Angeles Lakers. This is another example of a team looking to pace themselves in the regular season after reaching the finals for 2 straight years. But in the playoffs, they were back to their dominating ways. Kobe Bryant led the charge. It seemed like he was a reincarnation of the late 90s version of Michael Jordan. But his teammates showed up big time throughout the playoffs, as Pau Gasol, Derek Fisher, and Ron Artest all had game winners during this playoff run. They had all the confidence needed to defeat the Celtics in a tough 7-game series. Number 51, we have the 1988 Los Angeles Lakers. They were just 1 year removed from their most dominant season of the Showtime era. And if it wasn't for injuries from Magic Johnson and Michael Cooper, they could have won close to 70 games. But in the playoffs, they were pushed to the limit. It took all 7 games to beat their semifinals, conference finals, and finals opponents. The fact that so many different players stepped up into 3 total Game 7s shows how deep they were. We've now reached the top 50. At number 50, we have the 1963 Boston Celtics. This season was all about winning a title for Bob Cousy, who announced he was playing in his final year. They're looking for whatever kind of motivation to continue winning at a high level. In his honor, they scored the most points in a Game 7 in league history. They scored 142 points against the Cincinnati Royals. This team's identity was always their defense, but when they had it going like that, you were simply at their mercy. Number 49, we have the 1972 Milwaukee Bucks. While everyone was focusing on the Lakers and their historic winning streak, the Bucks were quietly having one of the most dominant seasons ever. They not only won 63 games, but they currently have the 7th highest margin of victory. Then there was Kareem, who had the greatest season of his career. They are famously known for ending the Lakers' 33-game winning streak. They fell short of reaching the finals, but there should be no shame in losing to a historic team like the Lakers. Number 48, we have the 1973 Boston Celtics. Their 68 wins in the regular season are the 4th highest win total in history. This team also has the most wins from a team that did not reach the finals. They lost consecutive games only once throughout the regular season. They are currently tied for the 4th most road wins in NBA history. They have a top 50 resume. Unfortunately, John Havlicek dislocated his shoulder in Game 3 of the conference finals. The Knicks eventually won the series in 7 games. If it wasn't for injuries, their ceiling could have been somewhere in the top 20. Number 47, we have the 2013 San Antonio Spurs. They only lost 2 games on their road to the finals, and they were 1 rebound away from defeating one of the greatest teams of all time. They nearly made history by carving out a new identity that they would later perfect in the following season. They spaced the floor, moved the ball, and shot the ball as well as any team. This organization refused to give up on their big 3, and they proved that they still had a lot more to give. Number 46, we have the 2019 Golden State Warriors. They were dealing with the championship fatigue, the Kevin Durant-Draymond Green feud. Steph Curry was injured in the regular season. Then Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson was injured for the finals. And yet, they were still a level above everyone else. They eliminated the Rockets and then swept the Blazers without KD. It turns out that the only thing that could stop them was health. No disrespect to the Raptors, but they would have won 3 straight titles if it wasn't for injuries. Number 45, we have the 2004 Detroit Pistons. They have a strong argument for being the greatest defensive team on this list. They posted 3rd best defensive rating in opponents' points per game since the merger. In the playoffs, they were able to play a level of defense that hasn't been matched by any team. Since 1960, the Pistons have had a total of 3 games that are in the top 20 of the lowest points allowed in a playoff game. It all culminated in the finals, where they forced the Lakers to score 16.4 points less than their season average. Number 44, we have the 2005 San Antonio Spurs. Just as it was for the previous team, they were historically great on defense. They even beat out the 05 Pistons in defensive rating and opponents' points per game. They were more than capable of playing their style, but they could also fill up the scoreboard if they needed to. In the conference finals, they beat the high-powered Phoenix Suns at their own game. They increased their scoring average by 12 points. They were one of those teams that could transcend any era. Number 43, we have the 1973 New York Knicks. They added 2 new weapons that gave them a whole new dynamic from their 1970 title team. They had a Hall of Famers Jerry Lucas and Earl the Pearl Monroe. After an up-and-down regular season, they were able to switch the narrative around with their defense. They completely halted the Celtics' fast break in their Game 7 matchup when they allowed 78 points. Then the finals against the Lakers, they held them to 14.9 points below their season average. Number 42, we have the 2018 Houston Rockets. They were a historically great offensive team. At first, we didn't know how Chris Paul would coexist with James Harden. Nobody could have imagined how great they played together and how easily they picked apart the opposition. They were masters at hunting mismatches and using their incredible playmaking skills to create for themselves or for others. They deserve credit for giving the Warriors their biggest test. Some believe they would have defeated them if Chris Paul was healthy. Number 41, we have the 2023 Denver Nuggets. This was another championship team that didn't dominate in the regular season. but they more than made up for it in the playoffs. They posted the 12th highest playoff win percentage. They went 16-4. They also had the 15th highest margin of victory for a single playoff run by a championship winning team. Jamal Murray took his game to another level and he was unstoppable on offense. Then there was Nikola Jokic. He was the most efficient and he posted the greatest all-around numbers by anyone that's ever won the title. Number 40, we have the 1981 Boston Celtics. They're only among 25 teams that ever win a title while achieving over 62 victories in the regular season. They were stacked with talent on offense and they were a hard-nosed defensive team. They also deserve credit for successfully coming back from a 3-1 series deficit against the Sixers. They had so many great clutch moments during their legendary comeback. And if you took their best player out, as the Rockets did to burn the finals, there was Cedric Maxwell, ready to step up. They could beat you in so many different ways. Number 39, we have the 1980 Los Angeles Lakers. This season was the birth of Showtime, as this was Magic Johnson's rookie year. Although he was their missing piece, we can't forget that this was Kareem's team. He was still in his prime, and he won the MVP. With all the other offensive weapons they had, they shot 52.9% from the field. That is the third highest in league history. And if you take Kareem out of the equation, they proved that they could win in the biggest game of the year without their captain. They just needed a little magic. Number 38, we have the 1999 San Antonio Spurs. Their dominance started with the Twin Towers, who gave every team hell on defense. They're the all-time leader in opponents' field goal percentage. They also had the second best defensive rating since the merger. We're talking about two of the greatest defensive big men of the modern era, and they played so well together. In the playoffs, they are tied for the 5th highest win percentage. They only lost twice on the road to their first title in franchise history. Number 37, we have the 1993 Chicago Bulls. After pacing themselves in the regular season, they immediately went to work in the playoffs. They swept the first 2 rounds. Even if you successfully limit Jordan's efficiency as the Knicks did, you still have to worry about Scottie Pippen. He stepped up in a major way in that series. But of course, there's always a possibility of Michael going GOAT mode, as he did in the finals when he averaged a record 41 points per game. In the end, they proved that anyone could step up and hit the big shot. Number 36, we have the 2012 Miami Heat. This season was all about redeeming themselves, and it wasn't going to be easy. Dwayne Wade missed 17 games in the shortened lockout season, but they went 14-3 without him. Then they lost Chris Bosh for the entire series against the Pacers and half of the series against Boston. It didn't matter. They came together as a team. Dwayne Wade had a few vintage performances. And then LeBron James went on to have one of the greatest playoff runs we've ever seen by a player. Once they were all healthy, it was a wrap for the entire NBA. Number 35, we have the 2002 Los Angeles Lakers. You're looking at the last team that completed a three-peat. No one has done it in over 2 decades and counting. That is the ultimate sign of a truly dominant team. There were many contributing factors. They had role players who were able to make some of the biggest shots in league history. They all played hard on defense. They were the league leaders in opponents' field goal percentage. Then there was Kobe and Shaq. They took turns picking teams apart and they both showed up when it mattered the most. Number 34, we have the 2007 San Antonio Spurs. The driving force for this team was a trio of Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker, who were all still in the primes of their career. This might have been the best that we've seen their big three play. If teams focused too much on stopping Duncan, Tony Parker proved that he would make you pay, as he did to the Cavaliers in the finals. They also benefited from having Michael Finley, who gave this team a weapon they never had in the previous 3 titles. They were no longer just a great defensive team. They had plenty of players who could score at a high level. Number 33, we have the 1984 Boston Celtics. They made 2 changes that allowed them to reach their ceiling. They named K.C. Jones as their head coach, and they traded for Dennis Johnson. He was one of the greatest defensive point guards, and he was able to successfully contain Magic Johnson in the finals. In the playoffs, they experienced a few close calls that would have ended their season. But this team had a knack for making the right plays at the right time. It certainly helps when you have one of the greatest clutch players of all time on your side. Larry Legend came through time and time again. Number 32, we have the 1998 Chicago Bulls. This team proved that they were much more than just the greatness of Jordan and Pippen. Scottie missed nearly the entire first half of the season, and they went 24-11 without him. They had the best record in the East. A big part of their greatness was their defense. The finals was the ultimate example of this. They contained the Jazz to 54 points in Game 3, which is the lowest scoring game in playoff history. For the series, they were contained to nearly 21 points less than their regular season average. Then on offense, they had the luxury of having the greatest scorer and clutch performer ever. It's safe to say that he saved his best for the very last dance. Number 31, we have the 1960 Boston Celtics. Their 79 win percentage means that they were on pace to winning 65 games in an 82-game schedule. This was an incredibly talented team. They had 7 Hall of Famers on the roster. They were all relatively in their prime and playing at a high level. But in the finals against the St. Louis Hawks, they were pushed to a 7th game. Behind Bill Russell's 22-point, 35-rebound performance, they won their 3rd title in 4 years. Number 30, we have the 2024 Boston Celtics. Statistically speaking, they had one of the most dominant seasons ever. They checked all the boxes to be considered a historic team. They were loaded from top to bottom. Their regular season and playoff records were legendary. They were the number 1 rated offense and the number 3 rated defense, and they had the 6th highest margin of victory in the regular season since 1960. But in the playoffs, it's fair to say that no team has ever benefited more from playing against teams that did not have their best player healthy. Number 29, we have the 1990 Detroit Pistons. What made their roster so special was the fact that they had so many elite two-way players. Many of them received either accolades for their stellar defensive play, or they were at the top of the league in some of the defensive categories. The philosophy of sharing the defensive burden was reflected on offense, where any of the 8 players can have a big scoring night. For most of the games for their playoff run, they had up to 7 to 8 players who were scoring in double digits. They are the definition of a complete team. Number 28, we have the 1982 Los Angeles Lakers. This was the beginning of the Pat Riley era. This occurred after a public dispute between Magic Johnson and Paul Westhead. Another big change they made was acquiring Bob McAdoo in a mid-season trade. After that, Showtime was officially back. They swept their way to the finals while playing the greatest fast break offense you'll ever see. They were just relentless on the open floor. With the former MVP coming off the bench, there was a case to be made that this is the greatest stretch of games the Showtime Lakers ever played. Number 27, we have the 2016 Golden State Warriors. They are unquestionably the greatest team to never win the title. They had the most regular season wins. They had the most wins regular season and postseason combined. They became the first team to play an entire season while suffering 0 back-to-back losses. And finally, the Warriors had a 21-2 record against the top 10 teams. That is the best single season mark ever. We only touched the surface of all the records they hold. Unfortunately, they also fell on the wrong side of history by becoming the only team to lose a 3-1 series lead in the finals. Number 26, we have the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. With Kyrie Irving out and then trying to play his way back to shape, the Cavaliers had an above-average regular season. The playoffs were a different story. They had the 13th highest margin of victory from a championship-winning team. They posted the 4th highest three-point field goal percentage from a team that at least reached the finals. But what puts them at another level is how they played after being down 3-1 to the greatest regular season team ever. Kyrie at times looked like the best player on the floor and even provided one of the greatest clutch shots ever. Then, to put it simply, LeBron James had arguably the greatest 3-game stretch in the history of basketball. We've now reached the top 25. At number 25, we have the 2009 Los Angeles Lakers. There have only been 15 teams that have won over 65 games and that have also won a title. The 09 Lakers are part of that exclusive club. Their success started with acquiring Pau Gasol in a mid-season trade the prior year. He was a perfect fit for the triangle offense. They also had so much versatility in their lineup and players who could hit big shots other than Kobe. In the playoffs, they also recorded the 20th highest margin of victory for a title-winning team. Their place among the best of the best is well deserved. Number 24, we have the 1962 Boston Celtics. They made history by becoming the first team to post a 60-win season. They also ranked in the top 20 for the highest margin of victory. They are the only team along with the 1967 Sixers to be ranked that high. But they were pushed to the limit in the playoffs. They faced Wilt Chamberlain and the Warriors and then the Jerry West and Elgin Baylor-led Lakers. Both series was pushed to a 7th game. In Game 7 against Wilt, Sam Jones made a game winner. In Game 7 of the finals, Bill Russell posted a 30-point, 40-rebound game. Number 23, we have the 2000 Los Angeles Lakers. They always had the talent, they just needed some direction. That's when Phil Jackson went on to build another dynasty. They are one of 14 teams to have won more than 67 games or more in a season. They had 3 total winning streaks of 10 or more games. On the defensive end, the Lakers currently have the 12th best opponent's field goal percentage. They allowed under 42%. But let's be real, they have the most dominant offensive force in league history. When Shaq is averaging 38 points per game on 61% shooting in the finals, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Number 22, we have the 2008 Boston Celtics. They displayed a dominance that rarely gets seen from a team that only won 24 games the prior year. They wasted no time in opposing their will after acquiring Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. What helped them get to that point was their defense, which to this day ranks as the NBA's finest. They also allowed under 42% shooting from their opponents. In the playoffs, they struggled a little too much. They played a record 26 games, but they made it all up in the final game of the year. They scored a season-high 132 points and they won by a margin of 39 points. That is the second biggest blowout in finals history. Number 21, we have the 1970 New York Knicks. In a league that's always centered around superstars, they define what it means to win as a team. The Knicks had the reputation for playing one of the most unselfish, pass-friendly styles in history. That's reflected in the balanced distribution of shot attempts among their starting 5. Then on defense, Hall of Fame coach Jack Ramsey said that they were aggressive, tough individually, and they had an excellent concept of team responsibility. This was proven when their captain went down in the finals. After lifting his troops up with his presence, they did the rest by beating a team full of stars. Number 20, we have the 1965 Boston Celtics. This is widely considered as the greatest Celtics team of the Russell era. It's the most he's ever won during his legendary career. As much as we talk about the ringmaster, Sam Jones deserves his flowers. He was the second best shooting guard behind Jerry West. He averaged over 25 points per game, which was the highest by any player during the Russell era. He took a bigger role in the offense, and they took their game to new heights. Then in the playoffs, it was John Havlicek that stole the ball and the game from Will Chamberlain. In the finals, the Lakers suffered the second largest point differential ever. Number 19, we have the 2015 Golden State Warriors. They're the ones that broke down the barriers and introduced the world to the new revolution of basketball. Behind their new head coach, Steve Kerr, they revamped their offense by significantly increasing the number of passes they made. He fully unleashed the Splash Brothers. But they weren't just winning by making a lot of threes, they're also the number 1 rated defense. Yes, it's true they benefited from playing a Cavaliers team who were without their 2 best players, but they get major points for being responsible for changing the way the game is played. Number 18, we have the 2013 Miami Heat. The legacy of this team is the streak. They won 27 straight games, the second longest winning streak in league history. What made this team so dominant was how efficient and effortless they were on offense. They had so much off-the-ball movement and players setting each other up beautifully for easy baskets. However, in the playoffs, they cooled off a bit. They were pushed to 7 games by the Pacers, who won 17 fewer games. In the finals, they were very close to losing in Game 6. That was when Ray Allen made one of the most clutch shots in league history, and then LeBron did the rest in the classic Game 7. Number 17, we have the 1992 Chicago Bulls. The numbers that they recorded during the regular season are Pantheon level stuff. They are only one of 10 teams to win over 67 games while winning the title. They are only one of 14 teams to beat their opponent by an average of over 10 points per game. From a talent perspective, you can make an argument that this is the greatest Bulls team. This was when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were in their athletic prime. But just like the 2013 Heat, they had their struggles in the playoffs and were pushed by much inferior teams. If they were a little more consistent, they would have surely been top 10 bound. Number 16, we have the 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder. This is another team that controlled their own destiny. They're in the conversation for being the greatest regular season team. They are tied for the 5th most wins. They have the highest margin of victory ever. In other words, no one dominated their opponents quite like they did. They are one of the greatest offenses and defenses of all time. They built this team perfectly around their MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But in the playoffs, they were pushed to a 7th game twice. That includes the Pacers team that won nearly 20 fewer games. To to reach the next tier, you have to prove your dominance in the biggest stage. Number 15, we have the 1985 Los Angeles Lakers. This is the best offensive team of the pre-Steph Curry era. You're not going to find a more explosive offensive team. They are the all-time leader in the highest field goal percentage shot as a team for a single season. They shot 54.5%. As it turns out, they were only warming up for the playoffs. They averaged the most points per game in playoff history with 126.3. They had the highest field goal percentage shot as a team that went farther than the first round with 54.3%. They also posted the 10th highest margin of victory in the playoffs. It was over 10 points. This was how dangerous a Magic Johnson-led offense was. Number 14, we have the 1991 Chicago Bulls. After years of playoff failures, they're looking to take all their anger out on their opponents. Their youth, athletic abilities, and tenacity that they displayed on defense is what stands out. They also mastered the system that will allow the rest of the players to help Jordan out on offense. They went to another level in the playoffs. They posted the 4th highest margin of victory, and they are tied for the 4th best playoff win percentage. Their 2 losses came in game winners. The truth is that they came as close as anyone to going undefeated in the playoffs. That's how dangerous a Michael Jordan-led team was. Number 13, we have the 2018 Golden State Warriors. In the regular season, they couldn't shake the injury bug. There were even stretches where they were without the Big Four. Even in the playoffs, they had to play the first 5 games without Steph Curry, and they went 5-0 without him. 4 of those victories were by 15 points or more. For the postseason, they beat their opponents by over double figures. They posted the 11th highest margin of victory. They later faced the biggest test of the KD era, and they were able to overcome a double-digit deficit in Game 7 on the road. Number 12, we have the 1989 Detroit Pistons. There's one move that they made that fully unleashed this team. They traded away Adrian Dantley and received Mark Aguirre. For the final 2 months of the season, the Pistons went on a 30-4 run that featured 18 double-digit victories. Imagine what could have happened if they had made this trade sooner. They continued rolling in the playoffs as their 15-2 playoff record is tied for the 4th highest win percentage. In the finals against the Lakers, they shot 52.7% for the series. That is the 2nd highest ever and only 0.1% less than what the 2014 Spurs shot. That was largely thanks to the genius of Isaiah Thomas and the type of floor general he was. Number 11, we have the 1967 Philadelphia 76ers. During the 60s, there was no other team that was even close to displaying this level of dominance. They started this season at 46-4, which remains the best 50-game start. This is what happens when you surround Wilt Chamberlain with the right supporting cast. He had 3 Hall of Fame teammates, Hal Greer, Billy Cunningham, and Chet Walker. In the playoffs, they get major credit for ending the Celtics' reign temporarily. They won in 5 games, with 3 of their victories coming by double digits. In the playoffs, they posted the 12th highest margin of victory. There is no question that their resume is top 10 worthy. Number 10, we have the 1972 Los Angeles Lakers. As amazing as their 33-game winning streak was, it is somehow enormously undersold. We're talking about going undefeated for 2 full months and winning 16 straight road games, which remains a record. Then you add the following stat. They had the 2nd highest margin of victory for a single season. This was accomplished thanks to Jerry West being willing to play the point, while focusing more on defense and jump-starting their fast break, and they surrounded them with young talents such as Gail Goodrich and Jim McMillan. Their offense took off. This helped enormously when Jerry was struggling with his shot in the playoffs, and they continued winning. Number 9, we have the 1997 Chicago Bulls. There wasn't much of a difference from their 1996 season, which is a team that for many people is the greatest ever. It's just common sense to put the Bulls this high on the list. They almost won 70 games in back-to-back years, which is an insane feat. They posted the 3rd most wins and the 8th highest margin of victory. Even though Dennis Rodman missed 25 games, they remained as dominant as ever. They certainly cooled off a bit in the playoffs. They had some difficulties shooting the ball efficiently. But the mark of a true great team is when they find a way to beat you even when they aren't playing at their best. When it came to closing out games, nobody was better than this team. Number 8, we have the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. It's the greatest comeback story. After a bitter end to their season, they were determined to take back what was theirs. What they did in the regular season in the first 3 rounds were great, but in the finals, they played the greatest stretch of basketball we have ever seen. The cutting, passing, and shooting that this team displayed throughout the series were simply exquisite. One stat that really sums it up is that the Spurs passed the ball 472 more times than the Heat did. It was all about getting the best possible look. It's no wonder they shot 52.8%, which is a finals record. By playing a team brand of basketball, they completely destroyed a super team. Number 7, we have the 1971 Milwaukee Bucks. From start to finish, no team dominated their opponents more. They had the 3rd highest margin of victory in the regular season, the highest ever in the playoffs, and the 5th highest playoff win percentage. Only one of their victories in the playoffs came by single digits. On defense, they allowed their opponents to just over 42%. On offense, they set a new standard when it comes to efficiency. They are the first team ever to average over 50% from the field. A lot of credit goes to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was the most unstoppable offensive force. But the addition of Oscar Robertson was huge. His experience and playmaking ability truly brought out the best out of everyone. Number 6, we have the 1983 Philadelphia 76ers. A team that was already great before the trade added the reigning MVP, and they were able to have one of the most legendary seasons. Moses Malone and Dr. J won the last 3 MVPs, and they complemented each other perfectly. Then there was Maurice Cheeks and Andrew Toney, who were also all-stars. On the bench, Bobby Jones was the first player to win the 6th Man of the Year. In the playoffs, Moses was convinced they would go undefeated. He was only off by 1 game. They are only one of 3 teams to go the entire postseason while only losing 1 game. That is a true definition of a historic team. Number 5, we have the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers. You remember the drama, the controversy, and the bickering from the 2 superstars. It was an up and down regular season. Then they reached a level we've never seen a team reach. They weren't only beating their opponents, they were demoralizing them. They currently had the 3rd highest margin of victory in playoff history. Let's not forget that each of their opponents in the playoffs won at least 50 games during the regular season, and their only loss came during overtime. There were Shaq and Kobe, who nearly became the only pair of teammates to average over 30 points per game for the playoffs, while also winning the title. They took turns destroying their opponents. They were playing defense at an all-time level, and their role players stepped up in a way they never had before. This is the greatest playoff team in league history. Number 4, we had the 1987 Los Angeles Lakers. Magic Johnson called it the best team he's ever been on, and with good reason. It took 32 years for a team to surpass the 115.6 offensive rating they posted. It wasn't until the 2019 Warriors finally broke their record. This is what happens when the greatest point guard of all time is at the peak of his powers. This was the first time he was ever the main scoring option, and it opened things up for all his teammates. No matter what style they played, they couldn't be stopped. In the playoffs, they continued bashing their opponents. They currently rank 7th all-time for playoff margin of victory. It's true that their Western Conference opponents weren't tough, but in the finals, 3 of their victories against the Celtics were by double digits. This was Showtime at its peak. Number 3, we have the 1986 Boston Celtics. The next 3 teams are all interchangeable. They all have strong cases to be considered the greatest team ever. What separates them from everyone else was having Bill Walton coming off the bench. We've never seen a 6th man affect the game the way he did. He fits so well with the identity of this team. They are considered by many as the greatest passing team ever. You never knew what they were going to do in each possession. On the other end, they had the highest defensive rating in the league. Their size gave teams so many problems. And let's not forget how great Larry Bird was playing. He won his 3rd straight MVP, and people were seriously considering crowning him the greatest player of all time. It's no wonder they only lost once at home in the regular season and the playoffs. They also ranked 9th all-time in playoff margin of victory. Number 2, we have the 1996 Chicago Bulls. From start to finish, they had the greatest and most dominant season. Period. End of discussion. They had the most wins from a title-winning team, the best combined regular season and playoff record. They only lost 1 time at their home floor. They had the highest net rating with 13.4 and the 4th highest margin of victory ever. You don't accomplish all of that if your team has any glaring weaknesses. This team had none. But on defense, they they were on another level. They had 3 players who were selected to the All-NBA First Team defense. Then you add Ron Harper in the mix, and they're the most versatile defensive team we've ever seen. That's what pushed them to continue dominating their opponents in the playoffs, even when they were struggling with their shot. It's why they only lost 3 games and finished 8th in margin of victory. But when they had it all going, there isn't a single team that could ever contend. Number 1, we have the 2017 Golden State Warriors. We're talking about a team that had 2 of the greatest and most transcendent offensive talents at the prime of their careers. They had one of the greatest shooters of all time. They had the winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award and the former Finals MVP winner coming off the bench. The talent that they had was overwhelming for teams, but it was the way they played together that made them unstoppable. No team was more unselfish, and they played at a level we may never see again. Let's not forget that Kevin Durant missed 20 games that year, and they still won 67 games and posted the 5th highest margin of victory. In the playoffs, they showed no mercy. They were the first team to start 15-0. They set the best playoff record and the 2nd highest margin of victory. In the finals, they faced an incredibly talented team and beat them like it was nothing. As Steve Kerr mentioned, who was also a member of the '96 Bulls, I think that was the highest level of basketball I've ever seen in my life. Enough said. But what about you all? How would you rank the greatest teams of all time? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.